Code of conduct.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. God made me punch in accurate numbers. My castle won't crumble. What I tackle will fumble. I've been a leader when they ain't see it, but now my feet is up. According to me, royalty didn't end with King Tut. Crown on my head, clouds is at my legs. Big says sky is the limit. I look down on the ledge. I push the bar like I'm opening a cell. Hands in my cookie jar, you won't come out with a single nail. I need all of mine. The weight of my shoulders won't fit on a scale. What's a king to a giant? Well, Goliath fell. Even if we playin' chess, dog, this king can't be checked. I make all my moves on the board, I invented my steps. I'm a king, the blood of a ruler, I feel like Mansa Musa. Make your squad disappear like landing by the Bermuda. Triangle, look at it from my angle. I'm a king, the closest thing to being one of God's angels. I'm a king. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is the Code of Conduct with the King podcast. I am your host, Jay Spence the King. And listen, y'all are listening to this on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network presented by Picasso Pizza. Treat yourself to the most flavorful pizza on game day. Picasso's. We are Buffalo Pizza, shipping local and nationwide. Order online on PicassoPizza.net. What is going on, everybody? I'm excited for tonight. I got a special guest, and we're going to get right into it off the top. Got my man, Mr. Paul Boy Green Esden Jr. He's representing he's the host of the Jet Zone, and he's the digital reporter for the Heavy on Sports Network. What is going on, Paul?
Well, King, thank you for allowing me in the throne room. First place, number one seed in the AFC. I wasn't sure if I was still going to crack the lineup, so thanks for carving out some time. Appreciate you.
No, man, we had to. It's the week forward, and I know the Jets. I know y'all. Y'all had a couple. Some rough things going on. We're going to talk about it. But at the same time, going into this week, you all should still feel kind of confident because, you beat the Bills a few weeks back. So, I don't know. I feel like in order to beat the man, you got to beat a man. And right now, technically, y'all beat us. So we got to get that back. So we're going into this weekend, man. How do you feel as a Jets fan, as somebody who covers the Jets? How do you feel this weekend?
This is going to be weird because what I'm about to say, I don't know if it's actually real, but there's almost a level of graviness here, if I may. I mean, all the experts, all the insiders, all the just casual football fans went, of course the Bills are going to sweep the Jets. I mean, it's the Jets. That's what everyone said heading into the season. So all of a sudden being in a position now where the Bills are like, well, we better split with the Jets or else, well, then the Jets sweep the Bills, which would be the first time that's happened since 2016. So, there's a weird level of swag, a little lean in the step as we're walking into the room this weekend going, well, Bills, all the pressure's on you in Buffalo. You're the number one seed. You guys are the ones that's supposed to be taking care of business here. The Jets are like, well, let's see what happens because, again, for Jet fans, I think for a lot of people, they're like, a lot of people didn't think the Jets would win once, let alone even the mere possibility, obviously, this weekend of potentially winning twice. So I think there's a little bit of swag. There's a little bit of lean in the step, if I may.
Well, you know what? Let's talk about it real quick because you mentioned that the Bills are the number one seed now after a weird chain of events Sunday. I feel like, I'm happy about it as a Bills fan, but the way everything happened Sunday, man, is if I was a betting man, which I am, I did not bet on this because I'm like, there's no way in the world that everything that we need to happen is going to fall in place for the Bills to go first, but it happened, and the Jets are still actually in playoff contention as well. They're at 7, so this is after week 13. The Bills are at 1, Kansas City at 2. I'm feeling a little nervous for the Ravens right now. Lamar Jackson is he's going to be out for about 4 weeks from what I'm hearing with the knee sprain. The Titans are at 4, the Bengals are at 5, the Miami Dolphins are at 6. We got them next week, and we're going to talk about them too because I don't like them.
Yeah,
but then
I don't blame it.
Your Jets are coming in at 7. So, let's just talk about Sunday first. What a weird day, man. What a weird Sunday. Your team, the Jets, listen, I feel like Minnesota right now is feeling like they're the kings of the AFC East, and I don't like it. But let's talk about your game a little bit. what happened? Why didn't you guys pull that one out? You kind of made a comeback in the second half and just wasn't able to really do it.
Yeah, I will say, first off, the troll job. So Vikings had a chance to win the NFC North. If they would have won, the Lions would have lost. Lions blow out the Jaguars. So they don't. But they said, we may not have won the NFC North, but at least we won the AFC East. And I went, it stings a little bit because, of course, the Jets were the final Infinity Stone over there to get the job done for Thanos. So I'll tell you, everything that could have went wrong in that first half. The largest deficit for the Jets was 17 points. They were down 20-3. Mm-hmm. You hate to say the officiating, but some of the officiating calls where, you thought it was going to be, where refs were swallowing the whistle a little bit because the Jets got the ball first and we saw the Vikings being a little aggressive with their cornerback play. So I said, we're going to call it like this. Okay, baby, whatever you call it, let's figure out what the strike zone is. And that's it for everybody. However, that wasn't the case early in the game where, some physical play was allowed on one side that wasn't allowed on the other. So I just want to call it even no matter what it is. If you want to play physical, great. If you want to be a little ticky-tacky with the calls, okay. So you have to understand how to play. So there's a little bit of that. And then the Jets simply not executing. Mike effing White, the legend of Mike White that you guys stopped last year. Really appreciate that all those dreams and desires were spectacular for as long as they lasted. I was in attendance for that 4-interception game of Mike White at MetLife Stadium. So thank you for that, by the way.
You're welcome.
But
You're welcome.
So the thing that made Mike White very good, again, that was his second start of the season so far this year in the Chicago game. And it was Chicago, of course, but he was just pinpoint accurate. His throws were just exactly where they had to be, not just in terms of Mike White to receiver, but Mike White to only where the receiver could have gotten it, put it up and high for Garrett Wilson as an example. And once you saw that at the beginning of the game, you're like, okay, this man's about to cook. In the Vikings game, you saw that the on-point accuracy wasn't there in this game, and you started going, oh, boy, if he's not throwing it there, and the receivers obviously aren't helping him out, it may be a long day at the office. So the Vikings really flexing their muscles with their offensive weapons. Justin Jefferson was held in check. He had like 7 catches, 45 yards, something like that. There's been a few times this season where he's gone invisible. Not against you guys, though. I saw that. No. The 4th and 18 one-hit. I mean, that was wild. It's Stephon Diggs in the same game. I mean, he had a great catch that no one's talking about. It's like it's the lost catch that'll be lost in the film room, I guess, because the Vikings win, and I guess that's the story that's told. But long story short, to kind of wrap it all into a beautiful bun, Jets got down early. Credit to them that they were able to fight back in hostile territory against a 9-2 team and make it a game and get to the 1-yard line multiple times. We had the 1-yard line drama with the Bills and Vikings once again in this Vikings-Jets game where they had opportunities, but they sucked in the red zone. Let's just call it how we see it. 1 for 6 in the red zone. I mean, that's almost impressive, that level of ineptitude. Like, how did that even happen? And then on the other side, the Vikings were 3 for 3, and that's, of course, referencing touchdowns in the red zone. So defensively, offensively, they blew the basket. And if you flip just one of those, obviously they lost by 5, 27-22. They win the game, but they did not. So impressive, 500 yards of offense, all that fun jazz, and Kirk Cousins sucked in the game. But the fact of the matter is you didn't get it done in the money zone. If you don't cash in there, you're going to lose games.
Yeah. And that's really the difference. Like in that game, when I went back and watched that one, you could tell, like, obviously the first half went a way that you didn't want it to go. But when you look at the entire game, you guys got it close. But when you go back and break down, okay, we didn't perform in the red zone, or we didn't do this, or we didn't do that. I think the red zone really comes down to it. Because if you would have, I hate when you go back and it's like, it's so obvious. It's like, damn it. If we just would have been better in this one area, we could have won that game. And speaking of that, so now let's go back in time. Now let's talk about the first Bills Jets matchup. I was in East Rutherford for that one, man. And it started off to where most Bills fans were probably like, yeah, this is about to be what we think it's going to be. We about to beat these boys down. And it was in the first half. It kind of first half, it was like, okay, the Bills are in control. Then, some good defense by the Jets. I think you guys have a great defense. Great run game that week. That game in the fourth quarter especially, it seemed like the Bills just couldn't get the ball. Like you guys controlled the clock, and you made it very difficult for Josh Allen in the offense to kind of make something happen there in the fourth quarter. What is your game, or I know I said let's look in the past, but let's just jump. Like, what is your? Because in a way, it's you would almost think, okay, it was the same game plan. We got James Jameson in the comments said that the Jets beat the Bills with the worst QB in the league. I don't know, because I think Baker's worse. I do. I think Baker's worse.
That's fair.
We're gonna talk about Baker, but
yeah.
And the Bills had Von Miller. Now no Von, and the Jets get a huge. I don't know about huge improvement, but he says easy game for the Jets. What's the game plan going into this, man? How are you looking at this?
Well, yeah, I will say, obviously, the Bill, everything, right? The kicker slips on the opening kickoff. People are like, "Ooh, onside kick." No, he just slipped. And then, obviously, I'm sure the Bills had that, regardless of where they were on the field. Obviously, they had phenomenal field position right off the get-go. But the Bills must have been like, let's check Sauce. Let's give him the old, the out and up. And then Sauce, of course, gets burned, toasted right off the get-go to Stephon Diggs. And I'm sure Bills fans, just like you, were going, well. Let's.
I was in the stadium. I was there, and I'm like, "Oh, it's 100%. Over." I'm like, "It's over."
Oh yeah, here we go. And then obviously, I'm sure just as confounding on the other side, right? Because Sauce has had this legendary status, which is weird to say for a rookie, right? But he's built like this aura around him, like, whoa, this is not your normal corner that you draft in the first round. And on the other side, right, like Josh Allen's this MVP candidate. I saw what the Bills did, and we could get to this, but like week 1 where they destroyed the Los Angeles Rams, I'm like, oh my Lanta, buckle up, baby. Look at this Bills team. I mean, depth, talent, star power, like, oh wow, this team's coming. And I haven't seen that team over the last batch of weeks, but in that game, like when Josh Allen threw the pick right to Jordan Whitehead, I'm watching the whole way. I'm like, there's no way. And he throws it right to him. I'm like, okay, what's happening here? I mean, I heard Josh explain after the game that the pass rusher was perfectly, like, apparently in his sight of vision. So he thought Dawson Knox was wide open. So he just thinks he's just softballing it to him. Jordan Whitehead's like, thank you, and takes it. So really, all the turnovers, the Sauce pick too, where he kind of fooled Josh Allen on that one too. I mean, the turnovers were key. And then on the other side, the thing that we have to look for this game is the Jets got housed in a way that they did last season a handful of times with running quarterbacks. And it wasn't even like if it's the starter, like Josh Allen obviously is the starter for the Bills. But last year they got dogged by Taysom Hill, who had these like just basically quarterback direct packages, and it toasted the Jets in that Jets Saints game last year, and the same thing in this Bills game. And we didn't get the opportunity for Justin Fields because he was out this season. But, those direct packages, that's where the Jets can kind of get got, because they'll do a 4-man rush. And occasionally, if Jeff Ulbricht's feeling trigger happy, the Jets defensive coordinator, he'll bring extra pressure. And it seemed like the Bills had the perfect counterpunch to a lot of those scenarios on the quarterback direct run stuff. And I think maybe I just undervalued it, and maybe the Jets defense did obviously as well, is that the Bills were going to hammer that as much as they did, that they were going to go to that. So that's obviously a major point of emphasis this week of trying, again, easier said than done on Josh freaking Allen, but the direct run stuff is the thing that every Jets coach, fan, and everything is circling with a permanent black marker. But you can't just focus on that because he can throw the ball pretty good too. But that's the big thing heading into this week. This Jets team is trying to figure out the Da Vinci Code of how do you prevent that or try to contain that.
Yeah, when you mentioned Sauce Gardner, man, first of all, can I just say, like, how much, and I know he's a Jets player, so I try my hardest not to give you guys compliments, but man, I wanted Sauce Gardner to be a Buffalo Bill so bad, and I knew we weren't going to get him. Obviously, he was going to be drafted top 10. We were drafting later, and I'm like, I want this guy on the roster so bad.
Yeah.
And the same thing for your running back. I know Hall is out,
I know
obviously.
that.
Man, impressive job this year with the draft, and even the I think offseason in general, the entire offseason, I think the Jets had a very, very good year. And speaking of Sauce, you talked about him getting burnt by Stephon Diggs that first play, but then the rest of the game, he pretty much showed why he was drafted where he was and why he's that player. What have you seen since? Really, I don't even want to say since that game, just the entire season, because I think he should be mentioned in that conversation when you're talking about defensive rookie of the year. What is it that you're seeing out of Sauce that you're like, man, we got a guy for a long time here in New York? Or New Jersey. I got to throw that out there. Yeah, but go ahead.
I knew that was coming. Well, thank you very much. I will say that, so Sauce, right, he's got the nickname. He's the number 4 overall pick, highest drafted player in Cincinnati football history. When you dive into everything, I think a lot of people said, okay, the sauce, the sexiness, but what about the level of competition? When he jumps the NFL, he didn't give up a touchdown throughout his college career, and obviously he did the humble roots of coming from Detroit. Like, there's a lot of storylines and things that you look at, and you're like, okay, but when he gets the NFL, he's gonna get humbled by things getting thrown in his face. But I think a thing that slips under the radar, and you probably wouldn't know unless he's on your own team and absorbing all the content that's coming in, is that, Sauce is a creature of preparation, that he is as hard of a worker and I know, coming in early, first one in, last one out, all that jazz, but like, of just a student of the game, and reaching out to Darrelle Revis and the organization, setting up meetings where they could talk after the draft, and picking the brains of those kind of guys. And also just the work he's done, that he talks a big game. Obviously, I want to be the greatest of all time and all these other things, but he's been putting in the work, and obviously he's got the God-given talent, the freakish traits and elite athleticism that all of a sudden you're like, man, like when he drops his arms, they're almost touching the ground because he's just got this insane lankiness to his game. But that's the thing, is that the confidence meets the bill, is that he has just been so incredibly good so fast. I thought he would be a good player, a guy that had a really high floor. I'm like, you know what? At least he's going to be this. I didn't know he was going to be this good, this quickly, just immediately. He's the front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's one of the Pro Bowl leaders in terms of AFC cornerbacks. So Tariq Woolen, which is another rookie corner, which is kind of crazy to think about. He was obviously taken much later. But you look at what Sauce been able to do. It's the confidence meeting the talent, and that doesn't always happen. We see guys get drafted, they're super talented all the time, and not equate to the talent. They lean on the talent too much, say, oh, I'm talented, I'll figure it out. Purple drank Jamarcus Russell, aisle one, please. Of just like, he could throw a football 100 yards. I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be a superstar, but he wasn't able to put it together on the field. Sauce has been able to put it together, a special player, a guy that wants it so bad. And man, if this is him in his rookie season, I can't wait to see where are you in 5 years, so to speak. I mean, he's such a special player.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I try not to give Jets or Patriots or Dolphins many compliments, but I'm telling you, man, Sauce Gardner, you got a guy. Like, really, man. I'm not jealous in the sense, because we got our Trey White back now. He's finally back, and he's taken the bulk of the reps again. And I think so I like our defensive backs. I like our cornerbacks. I love our safeties. We got 2 All-Pros when Micah Hyde is healthy. But I'm just telling you, like, this year at the draft, I was at the draft this year, and when it happened, I'm just like, oh, damn it, man. I don't want him to be in New York. But you know what? Congrats. You got a guy. You got a guy. So,
and that feels good. They've drafted a lot of bust over the years. So, when you hit one, I appreciate the tip of the caps that come. And I will say on Breece Hall, I knew it because, so for my day job, I do sports talk radio locally here in New York. So we got a lot of Bills fans. And so a lot of Bills fans follow me on Twitter. And I heard them chirping throughout the whole draft process, because I'm also a big draft guy. And they're like, oh, Bills fans, Breece Hall, baby, Breece Hall in the first round. That's what the Bills should do. Breece Hall in the first round. And I'm like, man, that Breece Hall kid's pretty good. We'll see what happens. And when the Jets traded up, they tried to trade up back into the back end of the first round, which would have been their 4th first-round pick, which would have tied their own record that they had back in 2000. They were this close to doing it. They couldn't. It would have been too expensive. They said, okay, we'll try to do it on day 2. They move up on day 2, get Breece Hall. And immediately Bills fans are texting me going, son of a gun. He looked like the offensive rookie of the year until he got hurt, unfortunately, week 7 against the Broncos. But he's another guy that looks like a stud. So it took a lot of hits this offseason, free agencies, draft, and everything to get to this point, and for the Jets to be surprising people. So credit to the coaching staff and Joe Douglas for finding those hits.
Man, I was in the media room, and when I tell you, you know how obviously as a media personality, like when you're in certain spaces, you're not supposed to let the fandom show, especially in places like that. Man, when I tell you, when that pick was made, it was the word. Like, I was so frustrated, I was so angry, and for a couple of reasons. One, now Bills fans can see before he got injured, that guy was probably going to be rookie of the year, period. Like, he was just that good. And so now when you think about it, it's like, after this injury, he's going to heal up. And when he does, he's going to come back. And that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to see twice a year for the foreseeable future. And we didn't even have to see him this last game.
Exactly. Right.
So it's just like, now let's get to the quarterback talk, because what the heck is going on? Like, obviously Zach Wilson was benched, but now, was this 100% accountability? Was it because he wasn't able to score points? Like, what was the actual issue? Why was he benched?
Yes. All of those reasons. Yes, those are it was a little bit of everything. Again, in the Bills game, it was a great response because you had New England the week before and the Jets blew it. Again, another game that I think a lot of people look back and say, man, this, especially the way the Bills just destroyed the Patriots on Thursday Night Football. The Jets people are like, how the hell did we lose to this team twice? What the flying who? How did we beat the Bills and then lose to these guys twice? Which again, may have put them in obviously in a much different position. Instead of 7-5, what are you if you beat the Patriots? But, coming off that Patriots game, a lot of people had Zach Wilson questions because he had the 3 picks, and they're like, oh boy, any other, the King or Boy Green, and we're winning that game at quarterback like Zach Wilson. If we would have just had C- play, we would have won that game. So to follow that up, not in Buffalo, but in New York to play that in New Jersey, for all you Bills fans out there, in that game, for Zach Wilson come back at a 73% completion percentage. Obviously, he didn't throw it all over the barnyard. He had like 150 yards, the 1 touchdown, which was the screen to James Robinson. And then the big play at the end, which ate up the timeouts, which probably changed how the Bills played that final drive, is the Denzel Mims conversion. But like in a nutshell, we're like, wow, Zach Wilson, way to respond after that horrible performance against New England. Like, okay, we see where this kid's going, but it always felt like offensively, like the offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, was playing a little scared. He's like, okay, if we just rein it in for Zach, Mark Sanchez, Jets rookie way back in the day, he got to a point where he was so turnover prone that the coaching staff changed it to a 3 color coded thing. If they showed the red card on the sideline, that's like, ooh, danger. Don't try anything crazy. Yellow card, okay, if you see it, maybe. Green card, all hell breaks loose. Like, it hasn't gotten that bad with Zach Wilson, but it got to that point where they were just really putting shackles and handcuffs on the offense. And we've seen with Mike White just in 2 starts that all of a sudden you get a quarterback in there where the shackles aren't on. They got Garrett Wilson. He looks pretty good. Elijah Moore looks pretty good. They got tight ends. They got running backs who are stepping in. They've got a lot of offensive talent that if it's manifested with an actual quarterback, they can do something. And I think that's the thing. So there's a lot of levels to this. Obviously, lack of success. As a starting quarterback, he was 5-2. That's pretty cool. But we all know that, and Bruce Nolan would appreciate this, right? Quarterbacks, quarterback wins or wins are not a quarterback stat, all that jazz. Are your Buffalo Rumblings people out there? But I will tell you the accountability was another big thing. Is that going to the presser and saying that when he straight up asked, and I don't care if you're emotional, I don't care if you're pissy, again, for the media, removing the thing for some fans that may not be aware of this, like players get to go into what we call the cool down room before they meet with us, the media, and they can spend as much time as they want in there. We're media. We're just going to wait till they step up to the podium. And Zach Wilson could have taken all the time he wanted. He decided to come right out there. So he's got no one to blame but himself. He can't be whiny and complainy, but he goes up there and they ask him after the New England game where they lose 10-3, right? And 2.5 inches of offense in the second half. Can't believe that's still a real stat. And he goes up there. They're like, hey, did you let your defense down? Straight up. Did you let the defense down? What happened there? And he said, no, I didn't. And again, as soon as that lit fire, obviously social media spreads like wildfire. And they evaluated everything and said, you know what? We got to make a change. The locker room was at stake. The lack of accountability looked terrible, obviously, because the defense played out of their mind. They only gave up 3 points in the game. So it was accountability. It was lack of play. It was everything. And now Zach Wilson is in QB school. It's already been announced by Robert Saleh. Zach Wilson will be a healthy scratch for the 3rd straight game. They've basically put him on a different part of the practice field. That's not really true. He's part of the scout team, but they basically put him over there and said, work on your fundamentals. Don't even worry about game prep because Mike White's a starter. Joe Flacco's a backup, and you're just going to kind of develop over there until you can figure it out. So that's going to be the future right now. So Zach Wilson will not even if an injury happens, be available for this game.
Man, talk about humbling, and then this past week, you lose to the Vikings, and then Mike White is like, look, he didn't play horribly, but he comes out and he takes full accountability. It is like, hey, I gotta score points. If I get you in the red zone and I got to get these points on the board as opposed to field goals, or we got to do this, or we got to do that. And literally it was the exact opposite of what Zach Wilson did. No, I didn't disappoint, or no, I didn't let the defense down. You absolutely did. When your defense stops the other team from scoring more than 3 points, you absolutely did. So, now let's talk about this Mike White, because you mentioned, last year the Bills were the first one to see him. Had a pretty good defensive day against them. But what do you expect this Sunday? Like, because I think he's not the same guy from last year. Obviously, you go through that experience, you get those mental reps and actual real reps in the game. It changes your experience. And then, I think being on the team for a little bit longer now, learning from the coaches and watching film, I think he's a different player, at least from what I see. So what do you expect out of him this week?
Yeah, I will say, again, Mike White was announced the starter for the Bears game, and then he had this past game. As soon as he was announced as the starter, and then he had the full week of reps and media opportunities, he brought up the Bills game himself and said, I learned a lot from that game. And it's not like he quite put the dagger on the ground and said, I'll see you in 2 weeks, Buffalo. But it was almost like, I'm ready to prove that was malarkey. That was nonsense. I was trying to do too much. And he tried to explain he took accountability as he's been doing this entire time. But he just said, game got out of hand. We were trying to force things and it got crazy. And all of a sudden things can snowball after that. He had 4 picks in the game, looked awful, obviously. And then they went right back to Zach Wilson. And that was a health thing last year as opposed to just a straight up benching or anything. But yeah, he believes he's learned a lot. And again, everything we've seen thus far, the Bears game, obviously, again, the Bears defense is trash. They traded 2 of their best players, Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn. They traded them. So the Bears, Zach Wilson would have looked great, is what a lot of fans believe in that Bears game. So when he came out and balled out against the Bears, I think there's still a level of hesitation because fans are split. Half of them, of course, Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall pick. They want him to be the future. They want him to be the franchise. And the other one is Mike White is this guy who's been cut 5 times, a former 5th-round pick of the Cowboys, this try-hard, someone that average Joes can kind of rally around. But is he the long-term answer? He's a free agent at the end of the year. So there's a lot of those trepidation with a guy like Mike White, despite the success. Okay, he had success, but the Bears game. Oh, he had success against the Bengals, but they didn't know what was coming. He had never had any opportunities before. He quieted some people in this Minnesota game. Again, he went buck wild. He had a couple of wow throws, the 4th and 10 to Corey Davis to convert, where the rest of the team is like, whoa, okay, look at this guy making throws when it matters, taking hits, taking pressure, and he showed a lot. But the Vikings, according to every DVOA ranking, sucks on defense and pass defense. So he looked at it again, but there's those same people with the questions. If he wants those questions to end, at Buffalo may be a good opportunity to quell some of those demons. And obviously it's bothered Mike White enough in press conference and media opportunities. He has gone out of his way to keep pointing out that Buffalo game. So we'll see. Of course, that 4-interception implosion was at MetLife. This one will be in the confines of Buffalo. And I'm sure Bills fans are pissed about that Jets thing. How the hell did we lose to the Jets? So they want the win and their own importance. Again, because of that weird Sunday where all the stars aligned, Jimmy Garoppolo went out. I'm like, oh, well, I guess the Dolphins are going to win that one now. Oh, they're not? Oh, man. Okay. They're going to complain about other teams, beating backup quarterbacks, but they lost by multiple scores. Odd. Dolphin fans, where you at?
Where you at, Dolphins fans? Where you at,
Dolphin fan? Yeah, take a hard look at that, baby. 6 seed. And again, if the Jets handle business against the Vikings, all of a sudden the Dolphins get kicked to that 7 seed. But once again, I digress there. So all this weird stuff had to happen for that to align. So we will see ultimately on Sunday how this goes. But the Bills, obviously, they know how important this is. And the division, they just got their first, you guys know, obviously. I'm telling you something you already know, but it took the Bills all the way till this point to get their first divisional win of the season against New England. So this game's important at home. This game's important for the division. This game's important for that home field advantage. I'm sure Bills would like. If they play the Chiefs again in the AFC Championship game, wouldn't mind, I'm sure, if it was in the lovely Bills territory as opposed to that daunting, haunting Arrowhead. So this is very important for the Bills, but it's also very important for the Jets.
I think that's preferred. Obviously, we wanted to go through Orchard Park.
Yes,
I mean the last 2 years, we lost in the playoffs to Kansas City in Kansas City, and at some point, it's like, okay, like I said at the top of the show, in order to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I just feel like for the Bills right now, it's the equivalent of the Chicago Bulls trying to get over the hump against the Detroit Pistons back in the day when Jordan, before Jordan was like, okay, I'm winning every championship I make it to. Before he could get there, he had to go through the Detroit Pistons who kicked his ass every single year. So now I feel like it's at the point where for the Bills, if we really want to take that step and we really want to, get to the Super Bowl and try to win it, it just is what it is. You got to beat the big brother. And but before we move on from this game, we talked a little bit about the offense, and my thing is, so last time, like I said, it was the run game. It was great defense. I'm sure the defense still wants to play lights out defense, and I'm sure that's the plan. But offensively, because Mike White is in there now, are we going to see more of a open passing attack, or is this going to be like more of aggressive passing as opposed to just trying to control the clock with the run game? Or what do you anticipate when it comes to the offense going against this Buffalo Bills defense?
100%. The passing game is going to open up, unlike that it did in that first matchup. The other factor is the emergence of some guy named Zonovan Knight, a.k.a. Bam, an undrafted free agent. Another guy I loved. I thought he deserved to be drafted straight up. So when he was a priority free agent for the Jets, I said, oh, that's a guy to watch. And he's been cryogenically frozen both on their practice squad and kind of just in no man's land. And there's no practice squad protections this year. So I was surprised someone didn't scoop him up earlier in the year, and he's had back-to-back, basically 100-plus yard performances in both rushing and receiving. So he's the secret sauce. Michael Carter's health will be another one. He had an ankle sprain and missed this past week's game, so we'll see if he's potentially back for this as well to kind of round out the backfield. But Zonovan Bam Knight is a new factor, because that was one of the most impressive things in that first Jets-Bills game is the Jets almost leaned across the line and said, hey, Bills, we're going to run it down your throat, and we're going to run it right here. And then the Bills were like, all right. And then boom, just over again. It was just imposing the will physically. It's got to be demoralizing for Bills fans and Bills defense go, holy crap, we know they're running it and there's not a goddamn thing we can do about it. I think the only pass play was that Denzel Mims one at the end on the third down conversion. All the other ones were run. And it was just boom, boom, boom. So, of course, this Jets team would love to impose their will physically from that standpoint. But this is a team that's more than willing to throw. It all depends on matchup-based things, and Garrett Wilson has become a focal point offensively, a guy that they can feed. They gave him 15 targets against the Vikings, and quite frankly, that still didn't feel like enough. So they are going to give him the rock. They're going to give Elijah Moore the rock. But it will be balanced. But if I had to try to speculate on percentages, like 60-40 pass to run, like they want to throw the ball. They want to throw the rock around a little bit, especially with what Mike White's shown in back-to-back performances, throwing for over 300 yards. Like, he's willing to throw and dime it up and not play that kind of protective nature that they seemingly did in the first game without taking the shots consistently.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I guess that question was there because, it's like, okay, well, this formula worked for us, the first time around. We won the game this way. And I know it's a different quarterback, but we kind of, if I'm a Jets fan, this is what I'm thinking. Like, we got to figure it out. We won with Zach Wilson, and like kind of what James Jameson in the comments said earlier.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, hey, we won with Zach Wilson. We could definitely win with a guy, but this is the formula. And then if we throw in some passes here or there, but it sounds like they're going to aggressively really try to attack the passing game and see what happens there. And this week, we're going to be without Von Miller, and I think that's huge. He's on IR for a couple more weeks after this game. And it's huge, not just because, he's a pass rusher, but I think he's dramatically improved the Bills' run defense as well. If you look at last season and the season before, the Bills were getting gashed week in and week out by the run game. This year, I feel like that game against the Jets, maybe like that fourth quarter or the second half against the Packers, and pretty much that's it, man. Like, we've shut down the run game when it comes to, like, Kareem Hunt had nothing. Nick Chubb had nothing, so you talk about these guys that typically go out there and destroy teams. We shut these guys down. Thanksgiving, we played against the Lions, who I don't think that they're as bad as their record shows, but their run game tends to be pretty good. Shut them down. Like, they had a couple red zone scores because of it, but when you look at the statistics from it, it just wasn't there. What do you think about your running game this time around with no Von Miller? We do get Tremaine Edmonds back. We will have Matt Milano, but no Von is a big deal.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's a massive deal. In that first game, he had a strip sack in the red zone. That would have been points for the Jets in some form or fashion. Of course, they were benefited on the other side. The Sauce pick came right after that, so that was able to equate out. But there's a rare, outside of that Josh Allen pick, and I know he's thrown a bunch of them this year, but outside of that, maybe that's the game-defining thing, and the Bills end up winning that game from that play. So I think Jet fans and the Jets as coaches are fully aware of Von Miller and the impact that he can have throughout this season. When there's been a guy that's been designated as this destroyer of Earth's pass rusher, the Jets have kind of cultivated these game plans of trying to take him out as much as possible. Myles Garrett is a great example. The Jets played the Browns in week 2, and every single snap, they either running back chipped, tight end chipped, or doubled Myles Garrett. And he said after the game that he was gassed out, and that's basically what the Jets wanted to do, is just make him earn everything he got. He exploded in the beginning of the game. He had like 2 sacks in like the first 10 minutes. We're like, oh boy. But all the chips eventually worked. And unfortunately, on the other side, it didn't, because Von Miller's strip sack was late. But in that same sense, that's what they want to do. And I think the other thing for Bills, from an outside perspective looking in, the thing that I loved what Von Miller also unlocked is almost like we brought up Michael Jordan earlier, he had that Michael Jordan effect. Like, his presence made the other Bills pass rushers rise up to his level, and all of a sudden they were firing. And I'm like, whoa, mamacita. Like, Von Miller's really good, but what he was able to do for the other Bills pass rushers made me like raise an eyebrow, like, oh boy, that's going to be something to watch. So to remove that chess piece, and now the Bills players have to step up and not have Von Miller, I think that's going to be tremendously important. And going back to your question about the run game, I thought Robert Saleh made a very interesting comment when playing opponents twice. Again, obviously in the AFC East, they play Dolphins, Bills, and Patriots each twice. But he said that regardless if you've played an opponent before, we basically wipe the entire game plan and start fresh, that we don't bring things in from that perspective. So that, to me, is a massive difference here. So just because they beat the Bills the first time, that doesn't mean, all right, well, let's dust off that plan. That'll work. Let's put that baby right back in. There's not a sense of complacency there. They want to create new ways and to try to surprise the Bills. And I'm sure the other way around for the Bills to try to do that to the Jets. So there will be a strong running presence. And again, Zonovan Knight has been really good. James Robinson has been kind of disappointing. Again, the yards per carry average has been really low, especially when you go into some of the advanced metrics with how he's been running. He complained about his role, which didn't really help. So I think it's going to be more Zonovan in this game, maybe less James Robinson. Part of that will, of course, contribute to Michael Carter's health. And then we saw it with the comment that you just highlighted. The offensive line is a lot different. You have Dwayne Brown, obviously. He's there. You have Laken Tomlinson at left guard. He's looking good. Connor McGovern's having a career year. Right guard, Elijah Tucker. We don't have him. We didn't have him for the first matchup either, our best offensive lineman. And then right tackle, we had Cedric Ogbuehi, the former first rounder of the Cincinnati Bengals. And, well, finally, there's some health back. Max Mitchell is back, the 4th rounder out of Louisiana, who's played spectacular this year when given opportunities, especially considering draft status and everything else. And George Fant has been on IR and has missed the last 8 games before appearing in this Vikings game. And he looked really good when stepping in. I imagine he's going to be the right tackle for the Jets. So he was a steadying presence, and he looked really good and healthy for once, which is really nice to see. So that's going to make a difference both in the running game and in the passing game. So that nice boost on the offensive line should help. But yeah, Zonovan's a guy to watch out for Bills fans. They will try to run the ball. He's a north-south runner. He likes to get there aggressively, and he's got some pop. He's got fresh legs. He's basically been on the practice squad or not on a roster all season long up until he was called up for the Bears game and then this past Vikings game, and now he's a key piece of the offense moving forward. So Zonovan Knight, he is a guy that, again, the nickname indicates, he would keep bamming, and eventually he has those bursts. He had like a 44-yarder against the Vikings where they were like, whoa, where'd this come from? Again, he just kind of gets you after a while.
Yeah, I saw him against the Vikings, and it was just like he was explosive. I think like the very first drive of the game, he had a couple runs right off the bat where it was just like, okay, this dude is going to be a problem. Where are they getting these guys? Whereas like now, I think now Bills fans are happier with Devin Singletary and then the way James Cook has been playing recently.
Very nice.
For the early part of the season, it was like, man, when is this run game going to get going? And you guys got guys off the practice squad that comes in against the Vikings and just pops. So it's like, so no, it's very impressive. What I feel like the Bills, the Jets front office has done over the last couple seasons. They've really turned that franchise around, man. But now let's talk a little bit about the run defense now for you guys, because I just mentioned Devin Singletary has been playing big. He's been running bigger than he is. Smaller guy, I think he's 5'8", 205 pounds or something like that. Yeah. He's running bigger than that. James Cook, when he gets the ball with any amount of space, he's dangerous. So now your defense is. To me, your defense, again, I try not to give too many damn compliments to the Jets.
I know, yeah.
I got to be honest here. The Jets, to me, have one of the most solid and consistent defenses in the NFL. And I think that's all around. I don't think that's just with Sauce and in the secondary. I also think that run defense and that, and getting to the passer is pretty darn good too. What do you feel like this matchup is going to look like when it comes to the Bills run game, including Josh Allen? Because we got to look at him like the team's best running back. So you add we talked about that a little bit earlier, but in everything, both the running backs plus Josh Allen against this run defense of the Jets. How do you see that matchup going?
There's been some Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, you mentioned how the Bills defense, nice flex, just destroyed Cleveland's rushing game. I remember when the Jets played the Browns in week 2, we did not. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, they ran all over the New York Jets. It was okay at first, and all of a sudden exploded, and they were getting sliced left and right. They did an okay job against the Vikings, all things considered. They held Dalvin Cook within reason to 4.3 a carry, 20 attempts, 86 yards total, but he kept having a couple of these bursts that kind of broke through a little bit. So it's been a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde there. And then again, obviously, from Kirk Cousins, who has like the mobility of a parked car, to Josh Allen, who's this, rearing, flowing Ferrari out there, like that complement to the rest of the Bills rushing attack could kind of get them. And obviously it did a few times in that matchup. So the Jets have been hit and miss. And the big part that I'm sure Bills will take advantage of, and they did a couple of times, I remember in that game, is the Jets tackling has been poor. I mean, it's just been bad, where there's a 3rd and 17. They think everything's wrapped up. The guy breaks away and then somehow finds a way to get those yards. And, to me, as I look at it as a former football player and a former, almost a Oswego High School here locally Hall of Famer, they haven't built the statue yet or given me the awards, but I'm sure they're coming. And I got to tell you that in those scenarios, I just feel like if you're a good tackling team, you're a good tackling team. I don't think there's a magic wand that can be waved over the Jets where all of a sudden, we were doing it wrong the entire time. Here we go. So I think the tackling issues will maintain, especially at the third level of the defense. Their safeties have been very up and down, and mostly down lately. So if Devin Singletary, James Cook, or Josh Allen, for that matter, could get to that second and third level of the defense, that's where I'm like, oh boy, that's where we can start getting leaky. That's where, a 5-7 yard run could explode to a 20, 25, 40 yard run. And you get those explosives, which is the defense tries to rein in, but the running game has been so inconsistent in terms of their stopping the running game and the tackling. The tackling has just been really, really poor. They're working on the fundamentals, trying to do things in practice to try to curtail this. But again, at a certain point, you just need better tacklers on the team. You just need better stock. You need better, prospects, better talent to be able to do that. So the Jets have been struggling in that department. That could be something that rears its ugly head. But that's a little bit of the fear, of course, like we mentioned with that first Bills matchup. Again, the Bills were able to get some things going on the ground game, specifically with Josh Allen, but overall, they had some pops throughout the contest. And to remind myself, the Josh Allen 9 carries, 86 yards, 9.6 a clip. Good Lord have mercy, and the 2 touchdowns. And I see all the other running backs didn't seem to have the same level of success on a yards per carry, but it seemed like situationally a couple of times they're able to get things going. And sometimes just the threat, especially when you have Josh Allen, can make the rest of it go. But run defense has been hot and cold, and that's something that's got this team, particularly with the missed tackles.
All right, last question here on the Jets Bills before we move on to I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the AFC East.
Sure.
Levi wants to know, and yeah, it's been a do not play or like basically a healthy scratch for Robinson. What's going on with the run? I mean, obviously we mentioned you got a running back off your practice squad that's out here like looking, like a seasoned vet. What's happening? You guys traded in the middle of the season for James Robinson from where was he at? Down in
Jaguars.
With Jacksonville, and actually liked him last year before he tore his. I think he had it wasn't an ACL, but he tore
Achilles. Yeah,
he tore his Achilles. But I thought he was a good player, and I thought the Jets trading for him after Hall going down, I thought that was I'm like, what? That's a move that a team makes when they really feel like they can make some noise and still make the playoffs and make some noise in the tournament. What's happening?
Yeah, you mentioned it. Breece Hall goes down with a torn ACL. Super unfortunate both for the player and obviously the team. He was spectacular. He had a 65-yard touchdown run in that game. That was a lot of fun. He had a lot of those kind of plays. But, they basically the Jets brass, took about 24 hours to evaluate every running back option. And it ultimately came down to Cleveland or Jacksonville. The Jets did their homework heavily on Kareem Hunt, and they did their homework on James Robinson. James Robinson ultimately came down to price and what they believed was personality fit with the locker room. They gave him a 6th-round pick that could become a 5th-round pick if James Robinson reaches certain rushing incentives. And the Browns wanted a 4th-round pick from the Jets, and they thought for what they're going for and the fit, it was too rich for their blood. And the Browns ended up, holding Kareem Hunt, and he'll be a free agent anyway at the end of the year. But they brought in James Robinson. They thought he'd be this great guy and a former 1,000-yard rusher. I'm like, man, what a great value for what you're going to try to get for the rest of the year. And he's a restricted free agent this upcoming offseason. He'll be retained for cheap. That's going to be spectacular. So he was supposed to be a guy, and long story short, outside of a burst here or there, the Buffalo game obviously paid those immediate dividends, and he had the screen touchdown as well. But outside of that, he just hasn't been explosive. So he battled some knee soreness earlier in the year with Jacksonville, and that was a point of contention between him and the coaching staff. And there's been a little bit of that here as well. But explosiveness is the biggest thing. And also the scheme. Like, people forget about this. We just call it Madden all the time. All right, let's trade for this guy, plug and play. Like, this guy will be fine. But, like, the scheme changes. Like, for the Jets, they want running backs that are going to go north and south. None of this east-west playing around where defenses can kind of figure you out, and you're not just gaining as many yards as you possibly can. Actually, Breece Hall, believe it or not, battled some of these issues, and that's why why he started cold and the Jets didn't use him in that way, is he coming out of college, despite the zone schemes that he ran at Iowa State, where we thought was going to be a natural transition, he was doing too much east-west stuff, and the coaching staff was yelling his head off and biting his head off, saying, dude, just run north and south. And once it clicked for him, obviously we saw the success. James Robinson traded midseason, trying to learn the playbook, trying to learn pass protection and all of that stuff. He has struggled in that department. Per the Jets coaching staff, James Robinson has pushed back on some of those things, and that has resulted in James Robinson kind of being a non-factor. Now, the thing that brought him back last week is Michael Carter had an ankle sprain. He's out. He was out for the Vikings game, and there's a chance he'll be out for this game. Again, it's up in the air. If he's out, obviously James Robinson will be in, but he was a healthy scratch for that Bears game, and Zonovan went off. So obviously the Jets coaching staff decision worked, but James Robinson has kind of been worked out of the mix, and that may be the case moving forward.
All right. Well, let's move on a little bit around the AFC East. But before we do, I want to let everybody know next Tuesday to join me. We'll be talking to my man Mike Golick Jr. We're going to be talking about that Miami Dolphins game. Is Revenge Tour 2.0. We're starting the Revenge Tour this week with the New York Jets after we took a loss to them earlier in the season. But remember, that Miami one to me stung just a little bit more. So I can't wait. We're going to be talking to my guy Mike Golick Jr. is going to go down, and that is presented to you or brought to you by my man Buffalo Freddy. And listen, I always tell y'all, he got the best damn barbecue in Western New York. And if you don't believe me, go check it out. And if it's not the best brisket you've had, I will personally sell you the refund. And that's not it. Y'all already know Buffalo's the party town. I know it's cold. It don't matter. He has everything you need for inside and outdoor partying in any town. Period. So what do you need? He has it. Tents for tailgates, chairs, and tables. Not for you to jump through, but go ahead and give him a call. My man, call him at 716-4-FREDDY. That's 716-437-3339. And look, I'm ready. So let's talk about this AFC.
Look at that guest list, baby. Look at you, King. I guess that's why they gave you the crown. It makes sense.
Well, I got Paul. You can only go up from there, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right. That's fantastic.
So the AFC playoff picture, we talked about the Bills and the Jets already. Let's talk a little bit about the Dolphins. So now the Dolphins just surprised everybody and took this loss to the 49ers with a backup quarterback that nobody saw that coming. Now this week they're still on the West Coast and they go up against the Chargers. And I think the Chargers are kind of they have some playmakers now that are making plays at the right time. Keenan is back. Is back, and he's made some plays. First game he came back, I'm like, is he going to be that guy? He's that guy. He's back. And I think Justin Herbert, you can tell he's healthy now. Like that rib injury, he played through it. What do you think, man? I feel like the Dolphins are, hopefully for their fans, they're not taking a nosedive. But I don't know, like this little stretch in the season, they lost to the 49ers. Now they got the Chargers, and then as a Bills fan, I would like to think the Bills will beat them again next week. So it might be 3 games in a row where they went from being at the top of the AFC East to now, you're taking a few games of a fall here. What do you think might happen this weekend with those guys?
100%. So they're at 8-4 right now. Again, there's 3. Talk about 3 road games in a row. Brutal for Miami at 49ers, at LA, and then flying back over for the Bills game. And the latter of which are both primetime games with the flex. I mean, damn. This Dolphins team, I hope they took a picture when they were in first place in the AFC because that's going to last a lot longer. I think they're making the playoffs undoubtedly to me. However, like, I don't know. There's still this thing in the back of my head that, like, is Tua the guy? Because, like, against San Francisco, and I saw Dolphins fans complaining about this on social media, that as soon as he faced a quote-unquote real defense, he folded like a used lawn chair. And maybe there is something to that. But, when you kind of evaluate this team, and I figured, and I'm glad that you confirmed that, King, that I thought that when the Bills were looking at these two games, Jets, Dolphins, back-to-back, both this revenge tour you've talked about, where they've lost to both, I assume for Bills fans that the Dolphins one they felt much worse about, because statistically and everything, it's almost inexplainable that you said everything that happened and then the Bills lost somehow, some way. Like, maybe there's an easier way to rationalize it with the Jets game because of how the defense played and everything else. Like, there was mistakes made by the Bills. Like, okay, like I could see what happened here. Like in that Dolphins game, it's harder to understand how that was still a loss. So this Dolphins team, I don't know. The Chargers are just weird because they just lost to the Raiders. They should have lost to the Cardinals the week before. Thank God for the balls of Brandon Staley to do that 2-point conversion at the end, because he's a gosh darn wild man. But the Dolphins, how do you not beat Brock Purdy? Excuse me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're there. Like, as soon as Jimmy G goes down, I'm like, I penciled it in my head. I'm like, oh, obviously the Dolphins are going to win this game. I was hoping maybe the 49ers could give him some trouble. You know, the Mike McDaniel master student thing, like maybe he's going to flex on him. But I went, oh, Jimmy's down. Okay, it's over. And I'm like, whoa, Dolphins lost. What happened there? So, you know, then the Dolphins were stopped in their tracks. They had won 5 in a row. I mean, they were rolling red hot. So there's a chance here that they can slow up. Obviously, for the Chargers, they're 6-6. They're on the outside looking into the playoffs. They're sitting right there in New England, which is where I prefer they stay, might I add. But, you know, they're hanging out there. They need all of these games to try to make a run to even just get back into the mix. So I think the Dolphins can run into some issues here. You have Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle, you have all these talented guys. Jalen Waddle obviously getting hurt. But I don't know. For the Bills game, I love that for the Bills. I think the Bills are going to take care of business against the Chargers, or Dolphins rather. I'm less certain about the Chargers just because they've been so hit and miss. That could be a bounce back game potentially for the Dolphins. So overall, what are we talking about here? Let's look at the schedule. So they could win against the Chargers. That'd take them to 9. They lose to the Bills, still at 9. They have the Packers. Oh boy, yeah, give them a dub there. They play New England. I mean, come on, man. So, yeah, they're going to be hovering in that whatever 10-11 win range. And then let's see what happens in Week 18. They play at home against the Jets to wrap up the season. They're going to be in that ballpark of whatever the division ends up being with who the Bills got to play and also the Dolphins. But 10-11 wins is what I think I see here for Miami to finish off. They got a couple of softballs with Green Bay and New England, especially if they're not going to make the change of Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. And then obviously you've got Chargers, Bills, and Jets. So if you handle business and take care of just at least those two, the Packers and Patriots, you're at 10 wins. And I think 10 wins get you in the playoffs in the AFC.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned about the Miami Bills game earlier in the season. You mentioned how it's like, you know, the way that game went, you would think the Bills would have still won. And so at the game, man, like I think the Vikings fans also kind of complained about this, like the home field advantage that Miami has, where it's like
the temperature difference, sideline to sideline. Come on,
dude, we were sitting directly behind the bench, like maybe 10 rows up behind the bench. And when I tell you, it was like that, and even still, with that temperature being like that, Stephon Diggs having 2 IVs in his arm at halftime, half our offensive line going out due to like heat exhaustion and all that other stuff, the Bills still could have won that game. And so it's just, and then the way, so like Jets fans, like I feel like, at least my experience, I can't speak for everybody. I'm sure somebody is like, nope, screw those guys, I hate them. But for me, it's like I don't really have a negative experience with Jets. Like, you know, we have our crap talk and I'll go back and forth. But Dolphins fans, man, they take it to like this whole different place with this arrogance. Like they just, and it's reminiscent of like Patriots fans when they had Brady, but Miami hasn't won anything. So it just really, really bugs me, man. And it rubs me completely wrong. And I can't wait for next weekend. Like I'm excited for this game because I love every single week of the NFL action. But I can't wait for Miami to come to Buffalo, like come to Orchard Park. I don't hope it's snow, but I hope it's snow, and I hope it's like I just hope Miami really get dealt with. But anyway, now let's talk.
I will say, just to jump on that real quick, is that like for Dolphin fans, to me, first off, I just think they're just fair weather in general. So like when they're not good, like you don't hear they exist, like you at all. It's almost like Hulkamania, right? I do this, and I hear nothing. I will say, though, you know, for the most part, I've loved Bills fans because like Bills and Jets, I used to do this thing because we all hate the Patriots, right? But Bills, Jets, and Dolphins fans, I had a lot of friends before every season. We put our hands in the middle and say, come on, somebody's got to beat New England this year. One of us bastards. Let's combine our powers here, and somebody's got to do it. So there is this like kinship. And again, Bills have the 17-year playoff drought. The Jets are in the middle of their own right now with the 11-year playoff drought. Like it's just been tough. I will say recently, after that Bills game, like leading into it, I had a lot of the same feelings you just described for Miami with Bills fans, where I'm like, this arrogance. And it makes sense because, again, the Bills have they were the Super Bowl favorites heading into the year. Josh Allen was the MVP favorite. But I had all these Bills fans saying, like, man, the Jets are this fraud team and we're about to expose them. Like, I heard it from like Aaron Quinn of the Cover One group. Like, he did this thing and I ended up cashing in some receipts on that because they were calling Jets like the most fraud team ever. And I got to be honest that, you know, when I was hearing all that, I'm like, all right, let's just play the game, baby, and let's see what happens. Because I love Bills fans. You guys are crazy bastards, jumping through tables, doing the crazy shit you guys are doing. And again, you know, I'm not rooting for the Bills. I want you guys to go down in a pile of fiery pit in hell. But, you know, if somehow the Jets can't win the Super Bowl, I would love to see Buffalo. Your fans deserve all that after all the crap you've been through. But coming out of that one, I'm like, man, these Bills fans, there's just this bravado that's here that they think they're going to, and I described it in the same way, Patriots-ish. And I'm like, this is disgusting, Bills fans. Come on. Remember where you just were just a handful of years ago.
I remember that post because I commented on that post as well. But see, my comment proved to be true. You guys won the game, but I said the reason why, because I think you posted, it was like, why does the national media assume that, I think the spread was like 11.5 or something. And you were like, this is
it was something massive,
and,
right?
And I said, well, it's because Zach Wilson is cheeks. Like, that's what I said. And you were like, okay.
Oh, right. What was the stat?
Yeah.
It was something like the Jets were like the biggest, like it was something with a winning record at home. They're like the largest home underdog since like 2007. Yep. Right. Yep. That's the thing I shared. I'm like, wow, that's a stat. And I think Aaron and a couple Bills people went like, yeah, it's because your team sucks, or you with the cheeks. Like that's why it is. And I just went, like,
well, but I was talking specifically about Zach. Well, for me, it was just
about Zach Wilson. That's right.
Because I do think, like, and that's why I said I thought the game was going to be better, which obviously it was. We lost, but I thought the game itself, the team is good. I just really didn't believe in Zach. Well, and I'm like that about Miami. Sure. You talked about Tua. To me, it's the same thing, and I know apparently in some eyes, you know, some people had him in MVP conversation for a long time this season. Right, I still don't trust Tua as a quarterback. So that's what it was for me with Zach Wilson. But as a team, you just heard the compliments I didn't want to give you guys. I'm giving you compliments.
That's true.
I just don't want to. But I get exactly where you're coming from with that. There is a portion of Bills Mafia now who I just don't think we know how to deal with success.
And again, long overdue. Like you guys should be. I can only imagine the hell, and I think I will next year. But I can only when Breece Hall's back and everybody. But like I can only imagine the hell and how obnoxious I'm going to be when the Jets, I imagine, right? Because this year their Vegas over-under was 5.5 wins. Give it to us next year where all of a sudden people are like, whoa. Like I'm sure the Jets, like they had one primetime game this year, like the defunct one Jaguars week 16, because again, the Jets are the Jets. But now after this year of all the buzz and whatever ends up happening, right, they're going to get a little bit more love next year. And I can only imagine how obnoxious I'm going to be when that comes. So I completely understand it from Bills Mafia.
Well, but you're right though. We got to get back to the point where we at least have some type of camaraderie between the division. Besides Miami, I just don't fool with Miami. But but now let's before we get out of here, man, we got a couple minutes left. I want to get your opinion on one thing. So today, Baker Mayfield was claimed by the LA Rams. Now, before we even talk about him being claimed, can we just talk about how absolute? Like now, when I say somebody's cheeks, I really mean this guy Baker's cheeks. I don't understand how you could go from being drafted first overall. Like, what a swindle. What a swindle. Like, this guy fooled everybody, got drafted first overall. He had a really good rookie year. I'll give him credit where it's due. Yeah. Really good rookie year. What I'm hearing and seeing on Twitter and all the other spaces that I debate people on, they're like, well, he needs to be on a team with a good or a good offensive line. Like, well, yeah, if Nathan Peterman was on a team with a good offensive line, I'm sure he could be pretty good too. What a swindle, man. Like, just give me your thoughts on Baker and just the way everything played out.
Yeah, it's crazy because think about where we almost were, right? So Baker Mayfield's going to be on his, well, he is now on his third team in, you know, like a year's worth of time. Like you look at that rookie year, he was really good. In his third year, I knew there was another really good year in there. That was the 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions year. And then he had the turnover crazy year in 2019. And again, he brings the Browns to the playoffs and they beat Pittsburgh and all the craziness. And they're like, oh man, how much money, how much bag should we give Baker Mayfield? And all of a sudden the Deshaun Watson Watson stuff happens. They trade him to Carolina, and boom, before you know it, right? That's how I feel. Swindled. I'm like, what? Like, number 1 overall pick, this guy that basically has been overlooked his entire life, walk on here, walk on there. Number 1 pick, which is a surprise. All of us assumed, I won't say all of us, but me, I was like, oh, Sam Darnold, obviously, is going number 1. Me as a Jets team in that same draft, and you, obviously, with the Bills, it's like, I'm like, okay, maybe the Rosen one, maybe. This Josh Allen guy, I'm not really sure. Lamar Jackson, maybe. Sam Darnold, like, Baker Mayfield, like, I thought, of course, Sam Darnold's going number 1. So when he didn't that morning, waking up to Baker Mayfield's number 1 pick, I'm like, no, he's not. And then when they announced the pick, I'm like, holy shit, Baker Mayfield was just the number 1 pick. And so swindled is the best way to describe it. I just can't believe that at one point we were talking about him as one of the primo quarterbacks. Again, that 2020 year's the great example of 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, the crazy yardage and the quarterback rating and all that jazz. And all of a sudden he gets all hurt last year and it all goes to crap. And he goes to Carolina and people said, oh, Carolina, what a deal they got. And then he's cheeks. Yeah, as you said, just straight clapping cheeks. I mean, terrible. And now all of a sudden he's getting claimed by the Rams. And again, his 3rd team in a year. I mean, it's just wild.
I had to get your opinion on that because I've been tough on Baker since he's been drafted though because I feel like he came into the league super arrogant, like he already had won the Super Bowl 4 times, and it was just like, like, dude, calm down. So let's get on out of here, man. Let's let everybody know where they can find you and your content. Listen, he's a great follow and he's a great guy. He will actually talk to you if you're nice and if you take care of him. Let everybody know where they can find you, man.
And by the way, I love good back and forth, so let's get it going, baby. It's branding, so at Boy Green 25 everywhere, BOY, the green, the color as you see, and then 25 was my jersey number in high school. So Boy Green 25, there it is. Again, Facebook, Twitter, do YouTube shows myself, so you guys can check that out as well. So we got some great stuff. Greg Thompson's supposed to come on later this week. That's going to be good. We got to get the King. I got to check his busy schedule. Of course, he's got like Mike Golick Jr. coming on. So maybe I can book him for next year, perhaps, to try to get the King on the show. I don't know. My people talk to your people. Maybe we can figure this thing out.
We'll figure it out.
You know what? So guys, feel free to hop on over. I love all the bullshit, all the crap talking. Let's go. Let's keep it going because I'm sure Bills fans, number 1 seed, they're like, okay, back where we belong. Now let's slap off these peasant Jets and let's see what happens. I'm sure that's how a lot of Bills fans are feeling it, and let it go, baby. I'm hoping that you guys have the same receipt video I was able to cash in on that Monday. That felt juicy. It felt good to beat the Bills, this Super Bowl favorite team. I'm hoping we get to do it again, but if not, you know what? Feel free, guys, to throw some love on the Twitter account or hate. Either way, emotions are emotions, and man, I hope we have a good one. So good back and forth. I love doing this. This was spectacular, and yeah, if you guys want the Jets/Bills perspective as we progress through the rest of the week, we have a couple more shows this week with some fun guests, so it's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to the rematch, man.
Yeah, and shout out to Greg Thompson over at Cover One, and I'm sure if the Bills win, you'll be hearing from Aaron Quinn again, man. That's my brother. Shout out to Aaron Quinn.
he's so. I think he ended up unfollowing me and getting really upset. So I know he's lurking in the bushes. So wherever you are, Aaron Quinn, wherever you are, I know you're lurking. So as soon if the Bills end up winning, he's going to be like, in your face, Boy Green.
I told
piece
you.
Of garbage. Yeah, right. So he's been very quiet. Just like again, was that him back there? Are you hiding him over there? I don't know where he is, but I know he's kind of like peering in a corner, like waiting. And Aaron, I'm ready. You know, if and when the Bills win, I'll see you there. I'll be waiting for that DM tweet or whatever it is, buddy.
Yeah, he's lurking. But listen, everybody, y'all know how I do it over here with Buffalo Rumblings, Vidcast and Podcast Network. Y'all love each other, take care of each other, and live in peace. And as always, stay positive, test negative, go Bills.
Code of conduct.